looks like we are live. Can I get a thumbs up or a message that everybody can hear us? Cool. People can hear us. That's good. Yeah, thank you for confirmation. Welcome everybody to another community call with Memgraph. Today we have Vitali. Vitali will talk about graph code. His project that he used to build GraphRAG powered AI coding tools. I won't prolong this intro. Just so you know, at the end we'll have a Q&A session. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and we will answer at the end. Also, during the talk, at some point, I will open a poll so you can fill out the poll. This is quite useful to us. Yeah, and I'm giving the stage to Vitali. Vitali, please go.
Thank you very much, Ante. So I just want to know, can you give feedback if you can see my screen? It should show the graph code, graph technology for developer workflows.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
Excellent. So, okay. So, thank you for the introduction. Just a few words about graph code and how it came about. So I work at Ontario as an AI engineer and researcher, and we work work with graphs a lot, and especially when it comes to the medical domain. We digitize lots of PDFs into a graph format, and then which later we query based on the need. So, given that we have been using AI assistant a lot, and I've been working with lots of graph digitization, so it naturally came to me that why not just combine those two, like AI assisted coding and the graph representation. And I just tried this as a fun project, a weekend project, and as a proof of concept. And it turns out it went viral, and it was very well received. You can see, and how this is how the graph code basically started. So, so why graphs and why Memgraph? We'll talk about this, but in general, this is one way basically to represent a code base. It's about basically how to restructure code base in a way that LLMs can query and can understand, and it will give better context when you want to understand the code base. So let's talk a bit about the playing field today. What technologies are there? What companies are there? I think pretty much everyone in the audience knows about Cloud Code and Cursor. Just a quick kind of description: what type of pattern they search when they do AI assisted coding. So Cloud Code we can think of as a grep type of search. Obviously, this is a very simplified version of the description of a Cloud Code, but this is how basically it operates. It's so optimized for the bash commands that it makes this developer experience on a command line very smooth because it search files. It understands the repository by looking folders and the files, and then assisting the developer. So Cursor, on the other hand, obviously has also these bash commands it can use, but also it has the semantic understanding as well that uses embedding by indexing the code base at the beginning, and then also doing this semantic search also on top of usual grep search. This is, again, some of them are speculation, how exactly they do that, because it's not open source. But this is the feeling you get when you're using the Cursor and the Cloud Code. Some people claim one is better than the other, but it seems that recently Claude Code is getting more popularity. But what is missing from those tools is this bird's eye view of the code and code architecture. So basically, we don't see this architectural mapping in Cursor and Claude Code. Like if that were present in Claude Code, then Claude Code, instead of just doing rip grep and finding and reading the files all the time to see which function calls which function, it would basically leverage that graph structure to directly query that information instead of going, let's say, folder by folder or directory by directory or file by file. So that's where basically graph code comes in as a technology, that it can show the code base as interconnected graph that captures all the essential relationship across entities. The entities can be many things. It could be a function, could be a module, could be an external package, you name it. And actually, if we look at the code base later, we can see that we can even add as many as we like this type of relationships. But for now, they're like a set of defined relationship that we capture in the graph code. It's an ever-evolving project, so I'm happy to hear more use cases, more functionalities. That's where basically I'm hoping I'll get some questions about that and some interesting discussion about what type of relationship people will be looking for. So graph code is not only just for visualizing, the code base as graph and querying it, but it is also an assistant itself. And it combines this graph-based search and Claude Code style, grep style searching. So it's basically taking the best of the both worlds, and the agent basically decides which is more appropriate given the context, the prompt context that we give to the agent. For example, it can do like a surgical code replacement. If you're asking to edit a file, it will find where it needs to edit and apply this surgical replacement. Basically, everything is using this abstract syntax tree function detection and different kind of symbol detection in a code base, and tries to do this diff match patch, and then basically do the replacement. And obviously, it has a nice interface that you can visually see the differences, similar to Claude Code or Cursor. And also, it's very secure because I have put lots of thought on making it secure, not to just wipe out your environment. So it is confined to specific project root directory. So everything is basically documented. It's open, and we're welcome to add more security features if that is what is needed, for example, for some enterprise use case. So graph code, as already mentioned, it is using abstract syntax tree, but in particular, we're using this tree-seater library, which is language agnostic, and it gives you nice representation of this abstract syntax tree representation. Representation is different languages because it has the core. It has the core features, but also it has these grammar features for each language. For example, there's a tree-seater core, and there's tree-seater Python, C++, Rust, and many other languages which are tree-seater maintained and community maintained. So it's very easy to add new programming languages to the graph code, and make it understand that language and add relationship in relation to other languages as well. So graph code uses Memgraph, and the Memgraph, as we all know, it's a high-performance graph database, and it's very optimized for real-time analysis, right? and it's in memory and it's really fast. So this is the reason that I've chosen the Memgraph, because it's in memory and it's very, very fast. So every time we build a graph, it's very fast. And if you make an edit to a graph, to the code base, it will be reflected really fast in a graph. And it's using the translation when you ask in natural language about your code base. So this natural language is translated into Cypher query, and Cypher query is getting executed on a graph, and the results are fetched back and supplied as a context to the LLM, which LLM decides what to do next. So this is pretty much the workflow of an agent, how the graph code operates as a full AI assistant. And obviously, we have very nice visual exploration of a code base when we have Memgraph Lab, and we can explore our code base as a graph. And I will show you in a demo in a few minutes. So right now, graph code supports Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, C++, Rust, Java, Lua, but there are many more languages that are in the pipeline to be added, particularly Go, Scala, C#, Ruby, PHP, and Kotlin, and I think so. People ask me about some other exotic languages. So given that I'm the only one right now, like 99%, I'm only one working on a project, it's very hard to basically add a language. It's not hard, it's just time consuming with proper testing and bug fixing and so on. So it's taking a bit of time, but the aspiration is to basically support as many languages as they are. However, so we have, obviously, people can add support for a language themselves. The downside of that would be that the support will be very basic. It will not be comprehensive, and not all kind of relationship will be there in a graph. But again, people can add any language they like themselves, and it is very well documented in a graph code. So about the Memgraph, we mentioned about speed and memory. It's mostly about basically the query speed and fast batch insert and beautiful visualization. So fast batch insert is important because when you are defining the relationship in a code base, you want basically to add them as a batch, and the Memgraph is really good at that. So you don't want to wait your graph to be built in a long time. You just want it to be very fast. So that's also where Memgraph shines. So obviously, it is much faster compared to any other alternatives, as you can see. But yeah, for graph code perspective, so in-memory architecture and fast processing is coupled with beautiful visualization were the key for choosing Memgraph. So the roadmap, as mentioned, so right now we have 7 or 8 languages. So it is self-hosted. The visualization is everything is Dockerized, containerized, and using Docker Compose. You can see the Memgraph Lab and all the visualization. But in the near future, basically in 1 month time, so we'll have more languages, enhanced performance for very big repositories, and maybe web-based visualization. So those are kind of a moving targets that I have defined, and the graph code is basically positioned to be one of the best tools for mono repos because of this variety of languages in one repo, right? So that's why we want to add as many languages like. But in the near future, and there's also a community request for that, to convert graph code, graph building process, not necessarily the AI assistant itself, but just the graph building process to convert as a MCP server, that you can just call that server, get your graph and all the relationships, and then export it into another coding assistant, for example, like a Cloud Code or Cursor, and have it perform even better. And obviously, there will be some security fixes, and obviously, if you think about what is the future direction of this project, if it's going to be commercialized or get in a better production shape, then the cloud hosted options would be also in the agenda. So as I mentioned, MCP server integration I think is one of the key goals, because what I've noticed, like, people use GraphCode not for its AI assisting capabilities, not as a basically AI assistant as a like Cloud Code or Cursor, but for its relationship, graph building of graph and the relationship composition. So that's why MCP server I think is just one of the things that I would like to have and push for. That this to be like universal tool could be integrated in other systems. So this is pretty much about graph code and motivation behind it. Now I'm going to show you a demo. Now I will stop sharing and reshare my screen. You will see my screen in a few seconds. Hopefully you can see my screen now. And
yep, it is visible. Yeah.
Perfect. So what I just want to so what I want to show is how to basically use graph code in a command line similar to Cloud Code, and basically show how fast this is. So I have the clone of a repository here in my documents folder. I'm in the main branch. So, and then if you want to start, so basically the first step when you want to use the graph code is to build a graph for a specific repository. And then the second step would be, as you already have the graph representation of your code base, you start interacting with that graph representation with the help of AI. So firstly, when we want to build a graph, so this is the command we run. So you start with saying, okay, so I want to build a graph for the repo. And in this case, I'm putting dot, which means I am building the graph representation of the graph code GraphRAG, which is the same as a graph code. And I want to update graph. I want to clean it, and that there is nothing in a Memgraph memory. So I want to start from a clean state. So if you do that, so you will see it's starting to find all the relationship and then pushing everything to the graph. And this is like moderately sized repository, and you can see it's adding and all this relationship, and it's really fast, right? So it took like a couple of seconds to build this. And if you go to the now Memgraph, hopefully you see that, right? And we have this beautiful Memgraph workspace, and then we can basically visualize our code base. And this is basically the code graph repository visualized. Let me just zoom in here, probably. And when you click on it, you can see this node is a project, and it has many connections from different places. For example, the connection that is here is a test3 operators py file, and it connects also to other files. But yeah, I mean, this is what the repo is looks like. For example, you have this tools package, and this package can contain a module. In this case, the relationship is contains module, and this is a module which also defines a class or a function, you name it. And one of the most maybe used feature of the graph code is also like understanding the relationship, especially the code relationship. In this case, you can see, for example, this export function calls this Memgraph ingester, right? And which itself defines and calls many other things. If you were to basically traverse this graph, so all this context is available to AI, and AI can basically define what type of Cypher query to write to understand how to traverse from the project root to specific, or to search what is available and what is contained in a folder or in a package, and find this information really fast compared to, let's say, Cloud Code folder by folder kind of a listing, and then traversing, let's say, one folder at a time. You kind of get the idea of how useful this might become when, as I showed one example, that so the relationship defined could be so far apart. And this is very precisely why the graph representation is helpful, because it will show you how to find these relationships really fast. Okay, so this is basically a graph. We constructed the graph and we visualized the graph. Now, the next question is, okay, how can I ask a question about this graph? So for that, you just need to start in an interactive mode. And the graph code is basically, it just tells you all the metadata you need to know about this session. In this case, it's starting Gemini 2.5, but let me have a faster model with Gemini 2.5 Flash, that we can interact with the code base faster than with Gemini 2.5 Pro. So, and as a side note, so you can actually add your own LLM to be used in this repo. In this case, we are using Gemini, but you can use OpenAI or Mini, or you can even add yours, for example, Claude or any other LLM that you prefer. As you can see, it's loading grammar, so it means basically, in other words, that all these languages are supported, and some of them are not available, but you can add them at some point. So we had some. I manually added them and then deleted. That's why I have some. I have a trace of those languages here, but those will be added in the future. So, and then they will be loaded successfully. So, as you can see, what we have a code retriever, which means that it can basically do code-based manipulation. File reader, it can read files, can write files, and it can edit files, right? And shell command, which means we can use, like Cloud Code, we can use lots of shell commands. And also you can analyze document. Like if you pass a PDF or image file, it can just read using a vision language model, and then pass that information to the orchestrator. So let's now, how you use the graph code. Let's start very simple. I can say, what is this repo about? And then submit this query. Now, what it will do, because it's a very simple request, it just went and then did ls command like Cloud Code and read the README, and then it gave me a very nice summary of what this repo is about. Yeah, it's a graph code, it says multi-language support, blah, blah, blah. So if I were to ask something that cannot be answered via grep type of search, then agent can decide to use a Cypher, basically translate into Cypher and then traverse the graph. For example, what is the maximum function called chain in this repo, right? This is something that you need to basically use the Cypher in order to understand that. If you look at the logs, it says it's basically the orchestrator is paraphrasing some of my my query into a nice English that can be understood by Cypher generator, and Cypher generator takes that as input and generates the Cypher command, which then gets executed on a graph, and the result is presented nicely as a table. And then when the result is passed to the LLM, then LLM decides to return the final result. In this case, it returns this nice output saying some free text saying maximum function call chain in this repository is 11. So sometimes in your code base, when you ask the same question, it might actually give you which function calls which function. So you might even get a better representation, better nice looking table than we get now, but this is the idea. So it can use both graph traversal to find information or grep search, depending on the question and depending on the complexity. Yeah, that's how agent operates. Okay, next I will quickly show an edit operation. For example, you can say, let's add this maximum chain info to the README, right? I can change any file or I can ask it to edit anything, but this is easy information. And also it shows that everything that comes is in memory. So it knows the previous history. So it can basically continue where it was. So, and it's warned me that it's going to be edit operation. So I'm fine with that. And I need to know exact path to the, okay. You can figure it out yourself. So this is exactly what the agentic system is. Sometimes it can be dumb and you need to steer it a bit. But as you can see here, it just visually shows that. So this specific row has been added in README, and yeah, it's been applied, and we can even go and verify that this is true. For example, if we open the cursor, in this case, say yes, this is very fast. So if we could just go to the repository, and then we just open up an editor, in this case cursor, and if I go here and I see the diff, you can see here that maximum function call chain is being added. Yeah, it's applied to the README. So this is pretty much this is pretty much about what functionalities are in the graph code as of today. So yeah, this is pretty much it. So I want to basically I want to now finish this with going back to my slides, and then yeah, and then passing to Ante. So the demo is done. So what I would like from you to do is basically try it, start the repo, play with it, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me via email or on GitHub. We have there's lots of information in GitHub, or you can just reach out to me in Twitter. This is pretty much it. Ante?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vitali, for a great presentation. It was great, and it's funny how you made that AI to do what you want
Yeah.
by being pushy. Yeah, I will use the opportunity since I'm the host to ask the first question, and then we'll go over the rest of the questions cast in the chat. So I'm just like curious if you can kind of bring a little color. You mentioned adding support for different languages later this year. So like, what are the challenges of adding different languages, and what are the specifics that you need to handle when you're adding different language?
That's a very good question. And I have been at the beginning, I have been thinking a lot about what's the best strategy of adding many languages, especially given I'm not proficient in many in those languages. Obviously, you cannot be, right? That's impossible. So the nice thing about the three-seater library, it's a language agnostic. So you can basically have these grammars written for that specific language, and when you look at them, they make all sense to you. It's going to be respective of the language. So what relationship you can extract, how the traversal works, and so on, and also plus I added this test-driven development approach when I just basically define what kind of relationship I'm looking for in this specific language. Let's say Rust or Go or I don't know Fortran, and then when this relationship is when the tests are written. So and I know those are kind of imports or call relationship are in the file. Then I go back and then see what is needed to be changed in the code base. And with the AI assistance as well, I just basically iterate multiple times. And I have optimized the system so much that adding one language is basically, it will take me maximum 1 or 2 days, basically, to thoroughly test it, have it like test written for all type of functionalities and relationships, and then, all the bug fixes after that. I hope it answers the question, but I'm
Yeah,
happy to
yeah,
dive into.
thanks. Yeah, so Steve asked about coming soon, Q4 2025, and there is a 2023 on your slide. That's probably a typo, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then Daniel asked, is Python 2.7 supported?
Unfortunately, no, not Python 2. It's actually well tested with Python 3.12 with UV and the UV's ecosystem basically. I think I tried with more recent versions of Python 13 and 14, but yeah, just short answer is no. You might give a try and see if it works, but most likely wouldn't. So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess the question is probably if the code base is very old, we want to visualize as a graph and using a graph code, and is it viable option? If this is like it has a huge demand and there's a lots of legacy code written in Python too, so that's something we can discuss basically.
Marco asked, are you running Memgraph in memory analytical mode or in transactional mode?
I think
Or this project?
it's in transactional mode,
Mhm.
although I have to double check that.
Yeah, okay. Um, so Daniel had another question. I will present it shortly.
Mm-hmm.
He's curious about how you deal with different branches. And Daniel, here I assume Git branches? Or
Yeah. Okay, so is it about relationship or Git branches? So that's
I
um,
would assume about Git branches.
okay. Um, I mean, just the usual best practices, basically. Um, if I want to work in parallel on graph code, adding multiple features, I do either work trees, Git work trees, or I just clone it separately, and I have two separate environments. As you can see, so in my terminal, I had graph code -2, which means it's a kind of a separate clone um, of a repo, and I just basically adding there as well as the initial version. So this is depending on what I do. It's just I choose one over the other.
Yeah, Daniel confirmed that he was referring to the Git branches, so we answered that correctly. So the Jacob has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does tree-seater create edges for function calls, or does graph code have to add those edges?
Oh, graph code has to add those basically. With tree-seater, what is nice about tree-seater, so you can see which module imports which module and what type of symbols from that module, and then it constructs, okay, so this is basically a function inside, let's say, this package that is calling that function which is imported from there. So basically we construct this call relationship in a graph code. If obviously I'm looking for much better and more elegant way to do it all the time, if something comes up and I learn something new, obviously I opt for that version. If people know better version and then better shortcuts, I am all ears.
There's another question. The
Mm-hmm.
question is, can I update the existing knowledge graph with new data points without disturbing the existing relations?
Yeah. Short answer is yes, you can. And there is a bit of more work to be done there, but so because of Tricity is so flexible, and the graph code is designed to work around it. So adding, basically, if you edit your code base, you don't have to rebuild your whole graph. So you can just add this diff basically to the graph. And that's it. It took me some time to actually do it properly, but there might be some edge cases which might not work. But I'm happy to see what people say about this. Test and give feedback.
So there was also another question in the same is, does this have a Python integration to build a graph and query the graph instead of doing everything through the terminal? This is more of, I guess, SDK
Yes.
versus UI type of thing.
Yes, there is, and there are example folders that shows exactly how to do that. So yeah, feel free to have a look and yeah, play with it.
Cool. Let me see. Ivan asked, thanks for the great presentation. He's in cybersecurity and was curious what happens when we dynamically created JavaScript at the runtime.
Right. Yeah, I think probably I think the question subtext it could there be some kind of injection there or what type of vulnerabilities there are. Probably that's what I'm reading what this question is about. So to be fair, I haven't tested it for security on or any other kind of a vulnerabilities there because it's not in production. The companies are not using that in production, or it's basically running on your local host. You, as you can see, you could saw in Memgraph Lab, but I understand that there could be lots of injections at the runtime. So I think if I understand question correctly, that's if that's what it's about. But in general, I would say JavaScript and TypeScript support are available because both JavaScript and TypeScript they have three-seater grammars. They are similar but different, but they both have their own place and they all have their own this runtime differences as well. So yeah, I'm not that much expert in JavaScript runtime. If you think that's something that I need to really consider that I'm not considering in a graph code, I will be happy to hear from you.
Cool. So even if you have follow-up on that, please let us know.
Yeah.
So there is this question. I'm looking into making connections in a graph between repositories. So you have a microservice system, it will be easier to figure out the connections and dependencies between different repos that are part of the same system. Do you have any idea how this could be done?
So let me understand the question. Am I creating the graph between repository? Okay, so we're talking about multi-repository, not specifically mono-repos, if I understand. So there's an experimental support that when you build a graph for one repository, when you can add a second graph to the repository without cleaning the first one, basically. When I showed the command line, I was using clean flag, basically to restart from fresh. But you don't have to do that. So it's basically you can add multiple repositories on top of each other. If there is a connection between them, it can basically find that. But if by making connections we mean manually adding connections, it is not supported as of today. If that's the question. If there's a more clarification, yeah, I'm happy to hear more.
Cool. Thanks. So there is this a bit more general question, and I can chime in also on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the data is very text dense. What do you think is the best way to construct a knowledge graph? Should it be focused on entity relationship expect from front, or using embeddings and semantic techniques once the data is in memory? So I guess this question is more about like how to leverage Memgraph search in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, having a cleaner graph, knowledge graph is much better than having a bunch of data just stuffed into chunks in Memgraph. There are multiple reasons for that. One of them could be like a memory usage. The other is, do you really need the data at this point? So building a knowledge graph that has like a layered knowledge, and then you have a reference to the files that are kind of used. If you have a bunch of files, then you can have like a node can represent a file, but you don't actually need to store the whole text. You just need to store some type of embedding to that. So that's my context. If you want to add something, Vitali, please.
Yeah, and this is a good question. I think in general, should the graph, especially in graph code, should we also have embedding nodes? I guess that's another way to look at this. As of today, there isn't, and it's deliberate actually. But it seems like the embedding and semantic search over code base is not a best strategy, like out of a box. So you need to really know what to embed, as Ante mentioned, what type of pointers to have that this node will help you basically find the information faster. So it's kind of a lot of optimization needs to be done there. So and it's too much work for unknown outcome, I would say, at this stage. So that's why I haven't experimented this. But there is an issue created in a graph code. I created that. Is it worth adding embeddings? So this is an open question. So right now there isn't. So whatever Cypher query, whatever an output is from Cypher query is being passed to agent. An agent looking at the output decides what to read and what to do next. So that's kind of, it gives you all information it needs from that kind of information. So there is no embedding information given to it.
So there's this question from Alexandra. I'm not sure, Vitali, have you worked on something PDFs to graph type of project?
Oh yeah, a lot. This is actually one of the bread and butters of the company. That's what we do. We convert PDFs into graphs, and there are so many ways to do it. There are like third-party solutions you can use, or vision language models you can use, or OCR techniques you can use, right? So each of them have their own pros and cons, but I'm more tended towards like vision language model type of conversion because because of their this spatial understanding and of the documents. And for example, if you have a PDF document, sometimes it's worth to try to convert that PDF into image, multiple images, and then have the vision language to read all of them, and then extract information from that image instead of raw PDF. But it is language dependent. Some languages they directly ingest PDF and read from them, but some of them they are really good understanding like images, like Gemini models. They by nature they are like multilingual, and they can understand all this graphs and different type of representation in a PDF. That when you do PDF parsing, sometimes you lose this information, and that's the downside using some parser. Like third-party parsers might lose that kind of information, so you need to be mindful about that. So it depends on the use case. I mean, short answer, but I have been working on this a lot. Happy to talk more about that in the context of graph code if people are interested.
So the team asks, can you kindly share some experience to deal with entity duplication? I'm not sure, have you even experienced that here in the code graph? Or it's more like this type of PDF thing?
The one thing was a bit tricky. I think I solved it. It was a few months ago when I was dealing with these duplicate function names, that you can have the same function or classes defined in different places, and sometimes you don't know which one is being imported. But I think using tree-sitter functionality by discovering the modules, it kind of this question went away. But at the first time, I was having this problem when it was implemented as a basic AST abstract syntax tree traversal. And it was very hard to basically do that because there will be multiple duplicate kind of nodes in a way. But in a graph code as of today, so you can have the same name defined twice, but it will be related to different entities. So, for example, if let's say module A contains function A, and module B also has function A, so the relationship would be between module A and function A and module B function A. So, and then some other nodes might reference those two different functions that have the same name. It works today this way because when we query via Cypher and traverse the graph, we can just land into this function A, which is defined in module B, or function A defined in module A. So, and it's up to LLM to interpret, to write, to get that information and then analyze that. So we don't want to restrict that search. I don't know if that makes sense, but this is very long answer.
Yeah. There is also a question from Steve. Could you show us some additional demos of how this could be used?
Sure.
Being mindful of the time, maybe we can, if you have some links to the examples of how the code graph works and can be used, we can maybe share those links in the chat.
Yeah, I can. There is even a YouTube video showing how you can use with Ollama, like local models. You don't have to use Gemini and the fancy latest and greatest models, but it can be used with any model. Basically, Ollama running locally, and you can install any model as long as you can run on your hardware. That's one way. Let me quickly find
Sure.
that. But yeah. Also about I don't know if this will work, but this is about Ollama. But also the MCP server, which is coming soon, would be a big deal. That it means that graph code could be embedded in any system, basically any agentic system, and could be queried. So how I imagine it, like Cloud Code, for example, if you ask a question about a code base, instead of going and doing grep and ls and searching, it can just call MCP, graph code MCP with natural language. It will translate into Cypher, and all the nodes and relationship will be given back, given that natural, which corresponds to that natural language, and that will go as a context to Cloud Code, and Cloud Code will be faster navigating the code base. So this is basically helping any AI coding assistant to navigate faster. Another example is Augment Code, for example. I don't know how they do their indexing, but it might supplement what they do as well, like really well code base understanding tool.
Cool. Thanks, Vitali, for sharing this video. It's you can access it via the link that Vitali shared in the chat.
Yeah, and
And
then
the last question,
yeah, one comment about this video is it's based on an old version of graph code, but you will get an idea. I think that's the main point I wanted to make.
Yeah. And for the rest of the folks, just for the context, so we share the link to the repo. There was in the questions tab. There's the last question. Does your querying have the RAG functionality where it stores the context of the previous questions when answering the follow-up question? If yes, how does this work?
Yes, so it doesn't have RAG functionality. It goes into the context of an LLM. In this case, if you're using Gemini, so the whole history is preserved. So that's a good point. So if it gets too long, then this could be one way to circumvent that. Basically, put that a history into some kind of a RAG and query that. But I haven't had this issue that I haven't this issue to talk to a code base for so long. If that happens and then if LLM becomes unusable, I just start a new session, similar to other coding tools. But it's a good kind of a question and then something to think about.
Cool. Looks like
M0
we
agentic framework. Yeah, an agentic memory framework. Yeah.
M0.
Yeah.
Looks like we went over all the questions. You did your presentation.
Yeah.
So I think it's the right time to wrap this up. Thanks once again, Vitali, for having this presentation. Thanks for sharing the knowledge with the community. Thanks for using Memgraph. Thanks to all the folks for coming. Keep an eye. We'll have a more community talks on GraphRAG topics and graphs in general and AI topics. Happy to have you have again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks everyone.
See you. Bye bye.